Please.
Let me tell you a truth that has completely shifted how I thought about leadership. It is simple but very powerful. People don't follow titles, they follow stories. Now, let's take a pause and think about the leaders who have truly inspired us in our lives. Was it their job titles that made us listen to them? Or that fascinating designation on their business cards that made us follow their lead? If we think deeply, it mostly wasn't. What drew us into the leadership that they carry is their story, the story they told about who they are, what they believe in, and why they do what they do. Their story created that connection and that made them more relatable to us and built that trust as leaders. And today, we are going to talk exactly that, the leadership brand. The leadership brand that leaders had carried so far, and how did they manage to carry it? And the most important topic for today is how do we create leadership brand through storytelling? Now, leadership today is evolving. It is no longer enough to simply have an authority or a position of power. Leadership is all about, once again, who you are, how you show up consistently in the minds and hearts of people around us. And that, my friends, is leadership brand. Think about your own experience for a moment. Have you ever met someone who's immediately made you feel inspired or understood even if you barely know them? Chances are the person had a very strong leadership brand. They shaped your perception through their stories and expressed themselves completely through the stories. So here's a big question. How do we craft that kind of a leadership brand? How do we use our own stories and our voice to become that leader that people want to follow? And that's exactly that we are going to explore today. Because the most powerful tools we will use to build our leadership brand are right within us, our story and our speech. And by the end of this episode, we'll understand how to create our personal leadership brand by telling authentic stories and speaking those stories with clarity and confidence. We'll see how you will create your unique journey and voice to inspire action, build trust, and create influence no matter where we are in our journey, no matter what is our role or title. So now let's deep dive and unlock the power of our leadership story and brand. So now that we have set the stage by understanding that people don't follow titles, they follow stories, let's dig deeper into what actually is a leadership brand. Because to craft your leadership brand, you first need to know what really it means, right? So now, what is a leadership brand? When you hear the word brand, you might immediately think of companies like Apple or Nike. Those brands bring to mind specific feelings, specific values, and promises. For example, Apple stands for innovation and simplicity, while Nike screams the energy, just do it motivation. Don't they? Well, guess what? You have a brand too, but it is not a logo or a catchy slogan. It is your leadership brand that is a consistent perception others have on you as leaders. Now, think about this. Every interaction you have with your team, your colleagues, your client contributes to a story they tell about you. And over time, those stories keep adding up one about the other, and a powerful image is created in their minds. And that image is what is called as the leadership brand. Now, let me give you a very simple definition. A leadership brand is a consistent perception others have on your values, your voice, and the impact that you create. Now, how do we create all of this? Let's break that down into three simple core components. The first core component is the identity, who you are. This is the very foundation. Your identity as a leader is your authentic self. It's not about trying to fit a mold or copying someone else's style. Who are you when you are at the best? What values do you hold so you strongly are known for and you do not compromise on it? Your identity includes your strengths, your passions, and even your quirks. Now, for example, we know leaders like Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. She was very well known for her empathy and calmness and decisiveness. And that identity became a huge part of her leadership world brand worldwide. People didn't just see her as a politician, they saw her as a compassionate leader who could guide a nation through crisis with grace. We have seen her actions that she has done during the COVID times, right? So now ask yourself, what qualities define me as a leader and how those qualities show up consistently? Because the leaders that we know has shown up consistently for the values, the qualities that they have for themselves. And that very soon will become the brand for ourselves. Now let's move on to look at the second core component, purpose, what you stand for. Your leadership brand also reflects your purpose, the why behind your actions. Simon Sinek, the author of Start With Why, very famously says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And your purpose is what drives you every single day. It is the impact that you want to create in the world. And purpose helps you stand out because it connects with people and their emotions. It turns your leadership into transformational from being transactional. Now let's take another example. Take Indra Nooyi, the former CEO of PepsiCo. Her purpose was very clear to lead with a focus on performance with purpose, balancing business results with social responsibility. And that clear purpose shaped how she communicated, how she made decisions, and how she inspired people inside and outside the company. That is a very powerful why, isn't it? So think, what is your leadership purpose? What do you want people to remember you for? And how do you want to make a difference? So the second core component was the purpose, what you stand for. So now let's move on to the third component, which is communication, how you show up. Lastly, your leadership brand is shaped by how you communicate, your voice, your style, and your presence. And this is not just about the words you say, it is also about the tone, the body language, and the consistency in how you communicate. Executive presence is a term you might have heard before, and it is very closely tied to the leadership branding. It is that something in how a leader carries themselves that makes others to listen, to follow, and to trust. Communication is where your story and your speech come together and build a long lasting brand. If your identity is who you are and your purpose is why you lead, and then communication is all about how you bring that to life every single day. Now, we saw the three core components. Now, let's look at examples of strong leadership brands. Let's look at some Examples. The first one could be from Jacinda Ardern. Her leadership brand is built on empathy, calmness, strength, and decisiveness in her leadership. She tells stories of connection and shared humanity, which resonates very deeply during the crisis. And stories that she talks and says during her leadership journey to tell people what are her decisions that she takes, goes on to talk about the values and the traits that she holds as a leader. Now, about Simon Sinek, he is synonymous with purpose driven leadership. His clear messaging, storytelling style help others discover their own why while creating a ripple effect of their inspired leaders. And we also looked at Indra Nooyi, right? She stands for the visionary leadership combined with social responsibility. And she's the one who brought in a lot of very good, healthy options into the brand, under the brand that she had carried when she was leading the program. Her brand reflects a leader who values both performance and purpose, inspiring trust in business. What do all these leaders have in common? They have a clear leadership identity, a strong purpose, and authentic way of telling people what they consistently reflect as a brand. Now that we have seen about how we can combine these three core components into the leadership brand, now let's take a look at the research backing as to why it is important to have a leadership brand. Harvard Business Review has numerous articles exploring leadership identity and how leaders' self perception aligns with how others see them. And the closer that alignment, the stronger is your brand. The huge, if there is a huge difference between the way you want people to perceive and the actual perception, it means you have a long way to work on your perception and leadership brand. Studies on executive presence highlight how storytelling skills are a very key factor in how leaders can earn that respect and trust and on a longer term build a brand. And there are various thought leaders have told about how leadership transition requires new brand identity and how communication is the core and essential to that evaluation. So, with all of that, what we understand is that your leadership brand is identity plus purpose plus communication. It's that consistent perception others hold about you. Strong leadership brand creates trust, inspire loyalty, and open doors. And executive presence and storytelling, critical tools to embody your brand every day. Now let's move on and look about the magic of storytelling. Now that we've explored what leadership brand really is, let's get into the magic behind what helps us build a brand, something that you can make your leadership truly memorable and impactful. Because storytelling is a magic and it is the very engine of your leadership brand. Why? Because stories connect us on the human level. Science tells us that when you share a story, your listener's brain just light up in a way that facts and data cannot really even match them. And here's a fascinating fact. When someone hears a compelling story, their brain starts releasing oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding chemical or the trust chemical. And this chemical literally makes people feel bonded, connected, and more willing to trust you and follow you. Now imagine this. Your story isn't just words. It is a bridge that creates trust faster than any PowerPoint slide could ever do. Don't we all need to build that bridge between people that we want to connect with? And it is not just trust as well. People remember stories 22 times more than those datas and facts alone. Now, think about the next time you are tempted to throw a bunch of statistics and data in a meeting. Let us always remember that stories build that empathy. They help people see the world through your eyes, understand your motivation, and make them feel a part of your own journey. And leadership, at its core, is about inspiring people to move together towards the same shared vision. And stories do exactly that. They create a shared identity and a collective purpose of people to come together with you. Now, with that being said, now let's talk about the kinds of stories every leader can and should use. First, your origin story. This is how you became the leader you are today. Maybe it is that defining moment, a challenge that you overcame, or a passion that lit that fire inside you. Sharing this story will help people understand your why and build that strong conviction about you and your leadership. And then there are stories of failures and resilience. And these are powerful stories because no one is perfect. When you openly share what went wrong and how you bounced back, you build credibility and you inspire courage. It shows that you are a human and that leadership is a journey and not a destination. Next, your vision story. This is the future that you see and invite other people to see your vision along with you. It is not just about the goals or strategies, it is even bigger. Vision is that inspiring picture that makes people want to be a part of something bigger. And that's going to be your vision story. And finally, team and organizational transformation stories. And these are stories that showcase impact, how your leadership make a difference, how your team grew, how a challenge has turned into an opportunity. And these stories celebrate success and reinforce your leadership brand in action. And these are stories which goes on again and again in front of people's eyes, and they take the trust in you because you've been there and done that. Now, here's the truth. Every leader already has a story worth telling. Your unique experiences, your struggles, your wins, they all create a perfect narrative that can actually inspire and influence others. The question is, will you tell others that story? Because the leaders who do are the ones who create a lasting impact and build a brand that people believe in. So, as we move forward, start thinking about your own leadership stories, how you can share them in a way that connects, inspires, and moves people into action. Remember, your story is a superpower. Use it well. So, we've seen how storytelling is your leadership superpower, the key to connecting and building trust with people. But here's the thing, your leadership brand doesn't just have to live inside your head or in the stories that you tell yourself. It lives in your voice. How you speak, the words you choose, the tone in which you communicate, your presence, all bring your brand to life in the real world. And that's what we're going to explore now. Speaking your brand from your inner clarity to your outer voice. Now, speaking your brand from inner clarity to outer voice is something very essential. Your leadership brand is not just an idea of feeling everything inside. It's something you project outwardly every time you open your mouth. Speaking your brand means aligning what you say and how you say it without who you really are and what you stand for. It's about showing up in a way that is authentic and consistent. So people don't just hear your words, they feel what you say, they feel your values, they feel the purpose through your voice. So let me break this down with a very simple formula. I'd like to use it as voice is equal to values plus vulnerability plus visibility. Let me repeat that for you. Voice is equal to values plus vulnerability plus visibility. Now let's take a look at the first part of the equation. Values, your guiding North Star. Your values are the foundation of your voice. They guide the messages you share and the way you share them. If I may also add, values guide the decisions as well. If your values are clarity and trust, for example, your voice will be honest, transparent, and straightforward. If your values are creativity and innovation, your voice might be playful, energetic, and full of vivid metaphors. Now, I want to take you back to the examples that we saw. Jacinta Ardern, for that example, the one who talks about empathy, compassion, and calmness. We could see that those are the values that she carries as a leader, and that will start reflecting in her voice as well. That is how she reflected her voice as well. When your message reflects your values, people sense that authenticity and they start building that connections. So it's very important for us to understand what are our values and what we stand for. Once we are clear, you will start seeing the difference in which your voice will project for itself. Our voice carries the values. The second equation, part of the equation in our voice is vulnerability, the power of being real. Vulnerability, the courage to show up as who you really are, including the imperfections, doubts, and the lessons that we've learned. Many leaders think vulnerability as a weakness, but actually, it is a powerful strength. When you share a story about a challenge you faced and admit how you did not have all the answers, you immediately build trust. You become relatable. People actually want to follow real humans, not those robotic leaders, right? So that goes on to tell that vulnerability is the power of being real for leaders. Now, coming to the third part of the equation of voice, visibility, showing up confidently and also consistently. Now, finally, visibility is about how often and how confidently you share your voice with others. It's not enough to have a great story and a great voice. In most cases, we all do. But the difference is that you have to show up in every meeting, in every presentations, in every one-on-one conversations, social media, and the conversations that you can have with your people. The more consistently you communicate your leadership brand, the stronger and the most recognizable that it can ever have. So now we went on to look at a simple formula for our voice: values plus vulnerability plus visibility. Now let's take a look at a case study in speaking your brand. Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks, is a visionary who famously came from humble working class background to lead one of the world's most iconic brands. Schultz's rags to riches story wasn't just a feel good tale. It is the cornerstone for his leadership brand. He often spoke about growing up in Brooklyn, housing project, witnessing hardships in community spirit, and the story shaped his values about inclusivity, empathy, and creating the third place. And this is the brand that he has created for himself. And he spoke it out really loud. When Charles spoke, you could Hear those values very clearly in his tone and the stories that he shared. His voice was warm, authentic, and filled with passion for connection because he embraced vulnerability by sharing his own struggles. He consistently showed up in interviews, speeches, and company culture conversations. Shell's leadership brand became more powerful and deeply trusted because of all of these factors. Now let's look at how you can speak your brand. So, how do you translate this into your daily leadership? Because that's very essential, right? Start by crafting what I call a story based elevator pitch. Instead of saying something generic like, I am a manager, I belong to this organization, how about we try this? I lead teams by helping them unlock their potential through trust and clear goals. You see the magic of the shift? Let's also look at another example. So instead of you try telling that I am in marketing, how about shifting and saying that I create campaigns that tell meaningful stories and connect brand to people's heart? Do you again see the difference from the former to the way you can actually reword it? You're not just stating a title, you're communicating your values, your purpose, and the outcome that you're creating. I am in marketing, I create campaigns, and I connect brand to people's heart. That's a shift that you make when you stop talking about the title and you start talking about the value, the purpose, the outcomes that you drive out of your work. Now, there's one more a layer to it, the power of tone, metaphors, and rhythm. How you say things matters as much as what you say. And that's a large part of communication when we talk about. I'd like to repeat that. How you say things matter as much as what you actually say. Your tone sets the emotional context, whether you come across as a calm or energetic or a passionate or even an authoritative person. Using metaphors helps people visualize your ideas and they better remember your message. For example, instead of saying we are changing strategy, we could say that we're steering the ship through new waters. Do you feel that difference? When I say we are changing strategy, it's mere words. But now applying a metaphor to it and saying that we are steering the ship through new waters, it is actually the same meaning. But now you can visually paint the picture of a new ship, a brand new ship, which is sailing in new territories, which essentially means that you're changing the strategy, isn't it? But the difference is that now you live in the minds of people. And the third thing is that is talking about rhythm. The pace and the pauses gives your speech the actual impact. Pausing at the right moment. Let your messages sink in. Because speaking too fast or speaking only in the same plain monotone can actually lose your audience. So now think about it. The next layer to building your leadership brand through storytelling. I really love this, the power of tone, metaphors, and rhythm. Tone is the emotional context. Now, remember the values that we spoke. If you can carry those values in your voice, that's essentially the tone that we are actually talking about. And the second thing is the metaphors. How can you help people visualize your ideas? From telling that we are changing into new strategies to telling that we are steering the ship in new territories, new waters, new terrain. That's whole new a nice way of helping people get in your ship. And the third one is a rhythm. It's all about in what pace that you talk and where you essentially give pauses, and that can be really powerful. So, with that, let's move on and look at consistency because consistency is the key. Now, remember, your leadership brand strengthens over time through consistent communication. How did Jacinda Ardern create that empathetic leadership that she created? How did Indra Nooyi create that purpose driven visionary leadership? How did Simon Sinek become the person that he is today? Did it all happen over a day? It happened over days and over months and over years. And that goes on to tell that leadership brand strengthens over time. And that can be done only through consistent communication. So now ask yourselves, am I sharing messages that align with my core values? Am I being authentic and showing my human side? Am I showing up often enough to make an impact? Because consistency builds familiarity, and that familiarity builds the next level of trust. And for that, it is super important for us to understand that we need to find and identify the values that we carry for ourselves and the stories that align with those values and use our power and voice to consistently keep bringing these conversations at work, on social media, and wherever we belong. And that consistency of communication and the consistency of your voice will actually create a bigger and a better brand that we are. Nice. So now let's move on and look at certain practical tips of how we build our leadership brand. Let's start small, right? If the idea of speaking your brand feels too overwhelming, now here's certain small and immediate quick tips for all of us to start. Practice your story based on that elevator pitch in front of a mirror or a trusted friend. So now what is an elevator pitch? Those 1 minute to 2 minute pitch that we can actually give to a person when we meet them on an elevator. So now here's a twist. You need to make a story based elevator pitch. Now we remember how we told that I am into marketing to what kind of value that we create. That is a story that we can actually use during our elevator pitch. So practice your story based elevator pitch in front of the mirror. The second thing is record yourself and listen to your tone and rhythm. Because we spoke how important is tone and metaphors and rhythm are. How do we now go about elevating it? By recording ourselves and to look at that video and see how we are presenting ourselves. Is our tone matching the value that we are talking? Because when we talk about creativity, we cannot have a straight face, right? We have to be beaming with that energy and passion that we're doing the job. Notice moments when you feel the most authentic and confident. And those are the stories that you can lean on to for your leadership brand building. Because stories are very important. And now let's start looking at those stories that we have been speaking about ourselves, the stories that we have lived through. And we did speak about all the stories that we can actually be talking about the origin story, the resilient stories, the success stories, the vulnerable stories as to share our power struggles and how did we come about it. The final one is to look for opportunities in your meetings, in your one on ones, in social media to share your values and purpose very naturally and authentically. So, these are certain ways where we can quickly start taking our every single step into building our leadership brand. So, to wrap up, your leadership brand is not just something you think about, it's something that you live by. You live through your voice every single day. By aligning your values, embracing your vulnerability, and showing up consistently with your voice, you transform your inner clarity into that powerful outer voice that not only inspires, influences, but lasts connections that you can actually create with people. And today we also looked at our former CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, how he turned his personal story and authentic voice into leadership brand that transformed an entire company and culture. You too can speak your brand with that kind of confidence and impact. Now that we've spoke about why is storytelling the superpower and how to speak our brand, let's get practical and start small, start today. And let us also look at the stories and start building it step by step because that is how we show up as the true leaders. And over time, we create a strong brand that we all can be actually talking every single day. Now, to close, I want you to remember one powerful truth. You don't need to have a fancy title to lead. Your story, your experiences, your values is the greatest source of influence. And leadership isn't about that label on your business card. It is about the stories that you tell to create an impact. And here is a big question that we all can ask for ourselves. What story will I choose to tell? What narrative will I craft that shapes my future? A story that can inspire others to join my journey. Because your voice is your leadership footprint, and every word you speak leaves an impression, creates that trust for people. Let's make it very powerful. Thank you.